Fiancé insisted on inviting his ex-girlfriend, who he's still obsessed with and keeps old love letters from, so I called off the wedding. But it only got messier from there. I, 34, male, have been with my fiancée, Michelle, 46 female, not confirmed, for 3 years now. We met through a couple of friends at a party and got along instantly. Both of us have been married before, but those marriages ended in divorce. I knew that she had a daughter from her marriage, but she never really introduced her to me because apparently she did not have a good relationship with her daughter. From what she told me, she got married really young when she was around 21. She and her college boyfriend had been dating for only 1 year when she got pregnant, and soon afterwards they decided to get married. It turned out to be a huge mistake because her ex-husband was not the guy she had believed him to be, and their relationship went downhill pretty quickly. They would fight frequently and about petty stuff, but the fight would escalate to levels where they would end up threatening to divorce one another but never would actually go through with it. Both of them are aware of the fact that there was no love between the two of them. They were just staying together for the sake of their daughter. So obviously, I found it quite bizarre that she had spent almost 6 years of her life with a man that she hated for the sake of her daughter, but then eventually she ended up cutting her daughter out of her life as well. Anyway, when she was around 28, she found out that her husband had been cheating on her, and that was the last straw. She packed up everything and moved out of the house, and then the custody battle began because apparently her ex-husband wanted to move away with their daughter. She wanted full custody of their daughter as well, so that went on for a couple of months, but eventually he was able to win that one and he got his way. According to what she had told me, her ex-husband had twisted and distorted facts, and his lawyer had gone above and beyond in trying to make her look like an incompetent and horrible mother, which eventually worked out in their favor because the judge granted full custody of their daughter to her ex-husband. She was allowed visiting rights, but her husband hardly ever let them see each other, and she eventually started growing distant from her daughter. They would speak on phone calls occasionally whenever her ex-husband felt like it, but then even those came to an end. Slowly but surely her daughter started phasing her out of her life altogether, and for the last couple of years they haven't even spoken to one another. Towards the beginning of our relationship, Michelle told me that her daughter is around 17 years old now and has already turned into one of the most toxic and self-centered kids that she knows. I found it shocking that she was speaking like this about her own daughter, and I thought that she meant that her daughter had turned into a typical rebellious teenage brat. But she went on to tell me that she believed her daughter was actually just really narcissistic and spoiled because of her father, and that's why she hadn't kept in touch with her anymore. I didn't have anybody else's word to go on, so I believed her. I really thought that she was some tragic figure who had gone for something horrible, and that's why she just couldn't have a relationship with her daughter anymore because her ex-husband had turned the kid against her. I sympathized with her for the past 3 years. And every time that she would speak badly about her daughter, I would tell her that her ex-husband and her daughter would face their karma one day, and then I would comfort her while she sobbed after yet another terrible interaction with her daughter. In these 3 years, she never introduced me to her daughter, nor did she ever let me speak to her. I found it a bit suspicious in the beginning. I learned to accept that maybe she just wasn't ready for it because of their strained relationship with one another. I'll have to admit that was pretty stupid of me, but anyway, I was so in love with her that I didn't find anything weird about it. And then a couple of weeks ago, I proposed to her and she accepted. We were overjoyed and, of course, we told our families immediately. Then about 2 days after that, she came to me crying and told me that she had tried to call her daughter and invite her to our anniversary party because she wasn't sure if she had received the invitation that she had sent. And her daughter had snubbed her and told her that she was never going to attend any event that had anything to do with Michelle. She was hysterical and I could tell that she was very upset. So I comforted her yet again, and this time I decided that I was going to give a piece of my mind to her daughter because this was extreme and disrespectful. I didn't have any way of contacting her because all I knew was her name. I didn't know how she looked, and neither did I have any contact info like any social media IDs or email addresses or whatever, so I had to do some digging of my own. But I couldn't find anything, and I ended up using Michelle's laptop to find her contact info. Until recently, I hadn't even thought of doing that because I wanted to respect Michelle's privacy, and if she did not want me contacting her daughter, then I wouldn't do so. But after her hysterical outburst, after being rejected by her daughter yet again, I felt like I had to do something since I was going to marry this woman and I couldn't allow her to be stepped on so frequently. And with these noble intentions, I found the email address by snooping through Michelle's laptop and wrote a pretty strongly worded email to her daughter. I basically just told her off for disrespecting her mother. Told her that she had been making her unhappy for so many years and that she should feel guilty about it. It was petty, but after I sent it, I felt very satisfied with myself. I did not hear from her after that, and neither did Michelle find out about it. So I assumed that her daughter must have read it and then ignored it. It was not what I had expected. I had wanted her to apologize to Michelle, but there was not much that I could do. And then fast forward to a couple of days back, we were having our engagement party at this restaurant that Michelle and I frequently visited. It was a pretty big deal for both of us, and a lot of people were invited, including both our families, friends, and co-workers. Midway through the party, all of a sudden, her daughter stormed in and handed me a note and started shouting in my face about how I had no right to send her an email like that, especially when I didn't even know the whole truth. At first, I honestly couldn't even recognize that it was Michelle's daughter because I had assumed that she was going to be a 17-year-old teenager, but in front of me there was a woman who was at least 23 to 25 years old. That was my first shock, and then when Michelle realized what was going on, she called security and had her daughter escorted out of the venue, but it was already too late. Her daughter had handed me whatever I needed to know and I had started unfolding the note as well. In the commotion, Michelle hadn't realized that I was holding something, and I had a gut feeling that I needed to read it quickly. And I was right because when I unfolded the note and started reading it out, I realized that there was a copy of what seemed like a police report attached to the note as well. Initially, I just skimmed it over and to my shock and horror, I realized that the police report basically said that Michelle had been arrested when she was around 34 for trying to break into her ex-husband's house while under the influence of alcohol and then threatening to kidnap her daughter and take her away when confronted by her ex-husband. Those were some serious charges, and from the report, she had even had to serve time and community service for that. I was horrified after reading that report even though I had just skimmed it, and luckily Michelle was still busy yelling at the security for having allowed her daughter in without confirming it with her first. The poor guys couldn't even say anything in their defense, even though it was not really their fault because Michelle's daughter did have an invitation. Anyway, it was good that there was a distraction for the time being because after reading that report, I saw what her daughter had written in the note and, basically, she had just exposed her mother. From the date on the report itself, I had figured out that if Michelle had been 34 back then, there was no way she was 38 right now. The report was from 12 years ago, so she had to be around 46 right now. In the note, her daughter had also mentioned that whatever nonsense her mother had been feeding me about herself and their relationship, it had all been complete and utter rubbish. And the real story was that Michelle was the one who had cheated on her husband 6 years into their marriage. She had been 6 years old at the time, but in spite of the affair, her father had been kind enough not to fight for her custody, and they had shared custody of her. That was the arrangement until her father started dating somebody 4 years after the divorce when she was 10 years old. Michelle was not fine with it even though she had dated her fair share of men after the divorce. She started trying to get back with her ex-husband, but her ex did not want her anymore and warned her to stay away. Michelle doubled down on her efforts when her ex-husband got engaged and started drinking to the point where she actually developed drinking problems. Then about a week before her ex-husband was supposed to get married, there was the incident that was mentioned in the police report, and that was the last straw because he couldn't allow Michelle to hurt their daughter. So he filed for full custody, and it was pretty easy for him to manage that, particularly after that incident. For about a year after that, she was in rehab after having a short stint of about 1 month in prison and community service. She sobered up in rehab and tried to re-establish contact with her daughter after requesting her ex-husband to allow it. At first, they only had supervised visits and everything was going well, but then out of the blue, she started hitting on her ex-husband again and begging him to come back every time she would meet him under the pretext of meeting their daughter. That creeped him out, and he stopped allowing his daughter to see her because that would mean having to see Michelle as well. And then eventually, Michelle sent a very hateful message to her ex-husband's wife while she was expecting, wishing unspeakable things on their baby that I don't even want to mention here. Just know that they were terrible things and nobody in their right mind would say things like that to a pregnant woman just because they were jealous. Anyway, Michelle's daughter was around 13 at the time and her father finally decided that it was about time that she found out what kind of a person her mother was and told her everything. Since then, she has had no contact with her mom and even now she has constantly kept trying to block her mother out of her life, but she just keeps finding ways to contact her. After reading that note and that police report, I was furious, and I was waiting for everyone to calm down so I could speak to Michelle. After she had managed to get her daughter kicked out, yelled at the security staff for a bit, she was speaking to some guests and apologizing for everything that had happened. So it took her almost 20 minutes to come to me after that, and as soon as she did, I grabbed her and I headed to the stage where the band was performing, grabbed the mic, and started reading out the police report. Everyone was confused in the beginning, but then when they started to make sense of things, people started to look really shocked. Michelle didn't even try to free herself. She literally just froze beside me while I was holding her wrist and I only let go after I had read out the entire police report to everybody present. I then looked at her right in the eye, and I told her that this was over. Her parents were right up there in front, and I could see that they were serious as well, but probably for different reasons. I was about to start reading the note attached as well, but then I guess Michelle finally realized what was going on as she shook herself free and made a run for it through the door. I could tell that she had been crying. All the guests looked extremely confused. but I honestly didn't have any emotions to spare that day. Soon after she ran away, I walked out and went to my car, drove back home and cried myself to sleep in the evening. That was almost 3 days ago, and since then I haven't heard from Michelle, but I have heard from her parents and they are not happy about what has happened. They and my parents handled the situation after we had left and sent the guests home. My parents had been able to contact me, but unfortunately Michelle was still nowhere to be found. And even though she had left her parents an email saying that she was going to come back home later, they were accusing me of ruining her life for no reason. They think that regardless of whatever information I had found out from that note and that police report, I should have kept it to myself and confronted Michelle in private instead of humiliating her publicly. They have told me that she is a delicate person and that while they do not deny that whatever she had pulled off in the past was horrible, she was a changed person now. And since I had spent the past 3 years with her, I should have known that and respected it instead of treating her, like, so disgustingly. Her parents have called me up. They have sent me messages and emails and they are basically just trying to blame me for this entire fiasco. They have accused me of ruining her mental health on purpose just because I was too egoistic to accept the fact that she had a past before me, which is ridiculous because, like I said, even I am a divorced guy. They have also called me selfish for not thinking about her reputation before I did something so reckless and, you know, the usual stuff. I don't really feel bad about any of that, but I do feel kind of iffy about the fact that she hasn't reached out to them or responded to anybody for the past 3 days. So she's obviously going through something, and I can't help but feel that I might have caused unnecessary drama by humiliating her in public instead of just confronting her in private and breaking up with her without the added humiliation. Her parents still have a point about one thing. I have been with her for the past 3 years, and with me, she's never been awful. And I could hardly even reconcile the person that I read about with the person that I know personally. I guess that's why I was so shocked and furious, because she had never told me about any of this, and she had always made herself seem like the victim. It was all lie after lie, and I guess that's why I did what I did. But if her parents are right, if she had really changed as a person and had been trying to fix her relationship with her daughter, then I don't think I would feel good about having humiliated her like that, especially considering the fact that everybody we knew was there, her extended family, her friends, and even her co-workers. Everybody deserves a chance to change, and I don't want to be the kind of guy who holds the past against people, but I also don't want to be played for a fall, and I just feel like the situation is really weird for me right now. More than anything else, I feel worried for Michelle because obviously she's not stable right now, and judging by her past she might do something rash and stupid, and I really don't want that because I wouldn't be able to stop blaming myself if she ends up hurting herself or even worse, somebody else. I really don't know what to do, and I feel like I'm the bad guy here somehow. But I just don't understand in what way exactly. I don't even understand if I really am or if I'm just being made to feel that way by Michelle's parents. Everything is a blur. So I really need to hear a set of objective opinions. So AITA for publicly humiliating and breaking up with my fiancé at our engagement party after I found out about her past? Update 1. So it has been a week and a half since our engagement party. Michelle hasn't reached out to me yet, but thankfully I know that she is safe and sound. I don't want to be with her anymore, but I wouldn't want her to hurt herself in any way whatsoever. So I'm glad that she's okay. I heard from her parents a couple of days ago. They sent me a text when she came back home and told me that in a couple of days, she would be coming by to collect all her stuff from my house since she had moved in with me about a year after we started dating. Now that we were obviously not together anymore, she had to move out, and I had already started packing her stuff to distract myself from everything about 3 days back. Before that, all I had been doing was laying in bed watching TV and trying to drown out all possible thoughts about Michelle and, of course, constantly reading and rereading that note in the police report. I have considered reaching back out to her daughter again because I know her email address. I sent that email a couple of weeks ago myself, but I haven't had the courage or the energy to do any of that. Besides, I don't even know what I would say to her because I'm still trying to process whatever I have found out about Michelle. I feel like I don't even know her anymore and it feels horrible. There is some hole in my heart or something equally bad. I have heard from my parents, my family, friends, and even co-workers, and they have told me to stay strong. They've sent me messages of consolation, and I'm glad that there are people who are there for me. But, honestly, I just want to be left alone. Michelle and her parents haven't shown up yet to collect her things, and I'm planning on going back to work tomorrow because I obviously cannot allow myself to fall apart over this one thing. So I've texted them, and I've told them that if they do intend on coming by at any point, they need to inform me beforehand because I've changed the locks, and I'm going back to work soon. So I won't be home at all times. I also told them that we're gonna have to split the cost of the engagement party since we're obviously not getting married anymore, but we still have to pay the rest of the charges for our vendors. They have agreed to all of it without any drama or any accusations, and I'm hoping that they can keep it this way when they show up to collect their things because it would be really tiring and emotionally draining for me to go over everything once again. Hopefully they'll do it soon enough so I can try to move on. Update 2. Hey, it has been 5 days since my last update, and today, in the morning, Michelle's parents finally texted me and they told me that they were going to be coming over in the evening to collect her stuff. I was cool with it because I had already packed away a lot of her things, and I left work early so I could head back home in time for Michelle and her parents to arrive. And about half an hour after I got home, she and her parents showed up. I was actually shocked to see her because even though it had been just a couple of days since our engagement party, she looked insanely different. There were bags under her eyes. She had cut her hair short and had a pixie cut now, which was shocking because she had always loved her hair. But before I noticed any of that, I realized that she was reeking of wine coolers, and I felt terrible about it because I knew that she had probably fought really hard to keep herself sober for so many years and now she was back to square one. But like many of you guys had suggested in the comments of my original post, I tried not to blame myself for it too much because honestly what I had done was in the heat of the moment, but she had had every opportunity to be honest with me and respect our relationship by being transparent with me about her past. So, while I definitely felt bad for her, I did not let it show. While her parents were taking the boxes of her stuff and putting them in their truck, she was in our bedroom looking for anything that I might have missed while packing her things. And when she didn't find anything, she came back out. But instead of helping her parents move her stuff, she just stood beside me awkwardly. It was weird for me as well, because I didn't have anything to say to her, but I could tell she wanted to talk to me. She just couldn't do it while her parents were around, so both of us waited until her parents were done moving the boxes. And then she asked them if she could stay back for a couple of minutes while I waited in the truck because she wanted to speak to me in private. It was evident that this had not been discussed beforehand and they looked a bit upset about it, but they didn't say anything. By then it had become very obvious to me that her parents hated my guts and I couldn't even blame them. I'm the guy who humiliated their daughter in front of their entire family and they're probably going to hold that against me forever. But, honestly, that doesn't really matter to me. Anyway, after her parents had walked back to the truck, she slammed the door shut and fell to her knees all of a sudden. She started sobbing hysterically and told me that she knew she was wrong. She knew that she had messed up in a way that she could not fix, and I had every right to be upset with her. She said that she didn't even blame me for what I did on the day of our engagement party by humiliating her, but all she wanted now was a second chance. She told me that she knew that her parents had been bothering me after that day, blaming me for ridiculous stuff, but she knew that it was not my fault and she had convinced them not to get on my nerves anymore. She said that she had been very upset with me, with herself and even with her daughter, and that's why she had ended up cutting off all her hair and drinking once again, even though she had promised herself that she was never going to drink again, especially after her daughter had cut her out of her life several years ago. And she had stuck to it so far because she had been a teetotaler for as long as I had known her. Unfortunately, now, because of what she was going through, she had started drinking once again. But for me, she was going to give it all up once again, and she even said that she was going to grow her hair before the wedding so she would look normal and genuinely try to fix all her mistakes. All that she wanted was for me to agree to marry her and that was it. From the way she was speaking, it was evident that she really believed that marrying me was going to fix all her problems. And it was really sad because I could tell that even now, while she was promising everything to me, she was probably still slightly drunk. I realized that everything that had been in the police report and the note had been true and she didn't need to marry me. She needed serious help and it was very upsetting that instead of getting her the help she desperately needed, her parents were looking for ways to blame other people for what was going on with her. Anyway, after some pleading, I got her to stand back up on her feet and I told her that she needed to leave even while she tried to reason with me. She was still crying when I gently escorted her to her parents who had been waiting for her in the truck for about 15 minutes. When she realized that I was rejecting her, she started wailing at the top of her lungs, but luckily, her parents started driving away as soon as that happened so I didn't have to suffer through more of that. It's not that I found her dramatic, it's just that I found it really sad and prophetic. And I genuinely wish for her to get better because today was emotionally very difficult for me. To see her in that state after having loved her for 3 years was not easy, and I hope that I never have to see her like that again, but at least I'm not going to have to see her for a really long time now and I hope that I can start trying to move on in the real sense now. It already feels like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders and I have had some sense of closure. She was a bit tipsy for sure, but it's still the closest thing to that I'm going to get for now, so I'm trying to be content with it. Update 3. So it's been about 2 months since my breakup with Michelle and, as far as I know, I have been blocked by her on every possible platform. Whether it was she who did it or her parents, I never know and neither am I interested in finding out. I'm just glad that she's getting the help that she needs because from what I know, a couple of her friends have told me that she is in rehab. They have kept in touch with her parents, and they have very little information on what exactly she's been up to. But I know that she's alright and I hope that she gets better. In the past 2 months, I have thought about it a lot and eventually I decided to send an email to Michelle's daughter thanking her for letting me know the truth about her mother, even though it probably wasn't easy for her to bring herself to get involved in her mom's life after being away from her for so long. I also apologized to her for sending her that first email where I was berating her without knowing the full truth about Michelle. She replied to it a couple of days later telling me that it was completely fine and it was all water under the bridge, so that was that. I honestly didn't think I would be posting here anytime soon, but then a couple of days ago, one of my common friends with Michelle told me that she had wanted to pass on an apology to me that she had written while she was in rehab. She couldn't pass it on to me through her parents for obvious reasons, so she got her friend to visit her and do it for her. And basically, it was just a note apologizing for everything that she did wrong, for lying and then acting insane about it.